All right, let's jump right in. Artificial intelligence is moving at an absolutely unbelievable pace, and governments are scrambling to keep up. Today, we're going to break down the US government's new proposed legislative framework, which is basically their detailed roadmap for how we're going to handle AI.
So, this whole thing is really built around four big ideas. We're going to start with how it plans to protect people, you and me, and our communities. Then we'll get into the super tricky balance between creators' rights and intellectual property. After that, we'll see the plan to make America #1 in AI, and we'll wrap it all up with the idea for one single national AI rulebook. First up, protecting people and communities. The framework makes it super clear that before we even talk about all the cool innovation, we have to deal with how AI impacts us on a personal level, starting right at home with our families and in our local towns. And right out of the gate, the document leads with this really powerful statement. It frames protecting kids not as just, a nice suggestion, but as a core requirement for any AI platform out there. This really sets a protective tone for everything else that follows. But this isn't just talk. This idea is then broken down into specific to-do items for Congress. We're talking about giving parents real, robust controls over what their kids see, setting up systems to verify age, and forcing platforms to build in safety features from the start. And it makes a huge point of saying that, yes, all our existing child privacy laws 100% apply to AI. Then the focus kind of zooms out, from the family to the entire community. Look, AI is incredibly power hungry, and this framework actually tackles that head on with something called a ratepayer protection pledge. The goal is really simple. Make sure that the massive energy needs of these new AI data centers don't end up making your electricity bills skyrocket. And the safeguards don't stop there. The plan also calls for making it easier to build the new power plants needed for AI, cracking down on all those awful AI-powered scams targeting older folks, and, this is a big one, giving grants and tax breaks to help small businesses use AI, so it's not just a tool for big tech.
Okay, next up is one of the thorniest, most debated areas in all of AI, the big clash between creators, free speech, and intellectual property. And this framework, well, it tries to walk a very, very fine line here.
So you've got this huge tug of war, right? On one side, you have to respect intellectual property. You have to protect artists and writers from having their work vacuumed up without permission. But on the other side, you've got the First Amendment and this incredible drive to innovate. The proposal really tries to navigate this minefield. And this brings us to the billion-dollar question that pretty much everyone in Hollywood and publishing is asking right now. Now, the framework's approach here is really interesting. Instead of having Congress write a law to answer this, it explicitly says, let the courts figure this out. It suggests that we should let the legal system hash this out, case by case, instead of setting one big restrictive rule right now. But hold on, that doesn't mean no new rules at all. The framework does call for a new federal law to protect you from unauthorized digital clones of your voice or likeness. Yeah, we're talking about deepfakes. It also throws out the idea of licensing systems, so creators could get paid by AI companies while also making sure to protect things like parody, satire, and journalism. Okay, so we've talked a lot about protections and guardrails. Now the framework completely shifts gears. This next part is all about one single goal: fueling American AI dominance and making sure the US wins the global AI race. So how do they plan to do it? Well, it's a three-step plan. First, create what they call regulatory sandboxes, which are basically safe spaces where companies can test new AI without facing a mountain of regulations right away. Second, unlock the government's massive treasure trove of data so it can be used to train AI. And third, use the expert agencies we already have instead of creating a brand new one. And the crucial point here, the whole strategy is about speed and agility. By avoiding the creation of some brand new and, let's be honest, probably slow-moving federal AI super agency, the plan tries to prevent getting bogged down in red tape. The idea is to use the expertise we already have in places like the FDA and give innovators the tools and data they need to build fast. And that leads us to the final and maybe the most important piece of the whole puzzle: creating a single national rulebook for AI. The goal here is simple: one consistent set of rules for the entire country. To make that happen, the entire plan rests on this really important legal idea called federal preemption. All it really means is that when you need one clear national standard, a single federal law can override or preempt all the different state laws. So, what does that actually look like in practice? Well, it creates these really clear lanes. States would still do important stuff, like enforce laws against fraud, use zoning to decide where data centers can be built, and control how their own state government uses AI. What they couldn't do is start making their own separate rules for how AI gets developed, or punish developers for how someone else misuses their tool. So, why does this matter so much? Well, the argument is that having 50 different and possibly conflicting sets of AI rules would just be a nightmare for anyone trying to build things. It would create this confusing patchwork that could seriously slow down American companies and hurt our ability to compete on the world stage.
And that really brings us to the essential question at the heart of this entire debate, doesn't it? This framework clearly prioritizes creating national standards to push innovation forward. But it leaves all of us to think about what is the right balance between that rapid progress and making sure everyone is protected. It is the central challenge of the AI age. Thanks for tuning in.